Welcome to Chapter 18 now.
Ben, what happened in Chapter 18?
I was getting to that. Now to kick off Chapter 18, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed on February 2nd of 1848, ending the war between the United States and Mexico. Mexico ceded 55% of its territory to the United States. The territories included present-day states of California, Nevada, Utah, and New Mexico. In exchange, the United States paid Mexico $15 million and agreed to take on the debts that Mexico had incurred during the war. He also provided protections for Mexican citizens living in the ceded territories, including the right to keep their property, the right to become U.S. citizens, and the protection of civil rights. The treaty marked the end of the war and lasted for more than 2 years and resulted in the deaths of thousands of soldiers and civilians on both sides. It also marked the beginning of a new era of U.S.-Mexican relations that would eventually lead to the open borders and increased economic cooperation between the two countries.
Now, we have to talk about the California Gold Rush. This began in 1848 when gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill in California. There was a huge movement of middle-class people to California, hoping to claim a piece of the wealth over there. Some were able to strike it rich, but others were less fortunate and were plagued with fever. Gold rushers even kept chasing beyond California, even all the way out to Australia.
But California was admitted as a free state, and in an attempt to stay far from civil war, the Compromise of 1850 was necessary to keep peace between the North and South. Many newly acquired U.S. territories were given the option to decide whether they wanted to allow slavery in their state or not. Part of this compromise was the Fugitive Slave Law, passed on September 18, 1850, and this act required that slaves be returned to their owners, even if they are in a free state. This also meant the government was now responsible for finding, returning, and trying to escape slaves. This led to a huge rise in the Underground Railroad, and no, it was not a locomotive under the ground, but rather a network of routes and safe houses established for enslaved African Americans to escape into free states and north into Canada. Go hockey!
Now, the Gaston purchase is a 29,670 square mile region of present-day southern Arizona and southwestern New Mexico that the U.S. bought from Mexico with the Treaty of Mesilla. This transaction took effect on the 8th of June, 1854. The control of this land was not free, however, costing about $10 million. This acquisition of land provided the needed land for the Southern Transcontinental Railroad and also established the current border between Mexico and the United States.
The Kansas-Nebraska Act became law on May 30th, 1854. The act repealed the Missouri Compromise by allowing for popular sovereignty, allowing the people of federal territories to decide whether their state would be free or not. The Missouri Compromise kept the Union from falling apart for the last 34 years, and its violation led to political turmoil. The remnants of the old Whig Party were destroyed, and thus led to the creation of the Republican Party. The Kansas-Nebraska Act also produced a violent uprising known as
Bleeding Kansas! Also known as Bloody Kansas, was a series of violent civil confrontations in the Kansas Territory between the years of 1854 and 1859. Now, Bloody Kansas emerged from a political and ideological debate over the legality of slavery in the proposed state of Kansas. The violence began when the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 allowed the residents of Kansas to decide for themselves whether or not they wanted slavery in their territory. Pro-slavery forces from neighboring Missouri poured into the territory to ensure that Kansas became a slave state, while anti-slavery forces from the north also arrived in Kansas to oppose slavery. From this, the result was a period of violence and civil unrest as both sides sought to control the territory.
We also see more parties emerge, two of them being the Free Soil and the Republican Party. The Free Soil Party arose in 1848 on August 9th in Buffalo, New York. After gaining new territory from Mexico, slavery was a hot topic for debate. These Free Soilers decided to form their party solely to refute the idea of permitting slavery in this new territory, as well as the rest of the country. Shortly, Free Soilers were old news, and they just ended up merging with the Republican Party on March 20th, 1854 in Ripon, Wisconsin. Republicanism sprung up rapidly in the Middle West and also protested against slavery. The new party sprung to the east faster than you could say John Green. It was able to elect a Republican Speaker of the House of Representatives within 2 years. Pretty impressive if you ask me. The party soon erupted to become the second most populous in the country. Even though this party became pretty successful, Southerners had nothing nice to say about it. As a matter of fact, they did not allow the party to exist south of the Mason-Dixon line. Nice.
Now, this wouldn't be Chapter 18 without talking about the Clayton-Bulwer Treaty. Signed in between the U.S. and the U.K., it was negotiated between John Clayton and Sir Henry Bulwer. This was an important treaty as it relieved tensions growing in South American interests, particularly tensions over building a canal that links the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean. This treaty provided that neither nation would build a canal without the other's consent, neither would make new colonies. Both powers would guarantee that it would be available on a neutral basis for all shipping. Glad that they could come to an agreement.
When the pickled border collie we got a letter. Alright, so how does it connect to our APUSH themes? This connects to the theme of politics and power as there were new large developments on the American political scene. New parties emerged such as the Free Soil and later the Republican Party. New political tactics of popular sovereignty. Large treaties negotiated with other countries such as Guadalupe Hidalgo and the Clayton-Bulwer Treaty. International politics heating up. North-South tensions.
Let's take a second to look at some changes and continuities. Regardless of the newly emerged political parties defeating slavery, it was still allowed in certain states. As previously stated, the Fugitive Slave Act required all slaves to be returned to their slave owners, even if the state they were in was considered free. On the flip side, slaves now had a way to escape with help from the Underground Railroads, which was a big change to the slavery system because it provided them with a glimpse of freedom and hope.
Well, that just about wraps up the most important topics in Chapter 18. Thanks for listening and happy studying. Tastes like history.
Boom.